this morning I'm interviewing Steve Rice as part of the ACSM's Distinguished Leaders Series in Exercise and Sports Medicine. So welcome, Steve.
Well, it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for taking the time. And I just wanted to start with a pretty broad question, actually. Where you grew up, high school, and then were you involved in sports? A lot of people that I've talked to were. And where did you go to undergrad, college, and eventually you went to medical school? So
okay,
you
we'll
can
go through all that. I was born in Brooklyn in the days of the Dodgers and was a Brooklyn Dodger fan.
Oh,
I was
Duke
7,
Snyder.
we moved out to all those guys. I went to 8 Dodger games, and Duke hit a homer in every one of them. And so we moved out to Long Island when I was 7 years old, and in East Meadow, Long Island. Went to college at Columbia. And junior high school, I played basketball and soccer. When I got to high school, I was a little too small for varsity soccer. I was 4'6", 92 pounds.
Wow.
And the first day they recruited me for soccer, and I looked at my skinny legs, I looked at those other big kids, and I said, "Where's the tennis team?" And I played 4 years of varsity tennis. And when I got to Columbia College, I got involved in sports broadcasting, which kept me involved in all of the activities of athletics. And I was in a fraternity, played a little fraternity ball for fun. When I finished college, I went to NYU for medical school and graduate school. I was in the MD Ph.D. program. And my brother graduated law school and joined the Manhattan firm. And so I wound up playing on their softball team. And
when you were in med school?
I was in medical school, first year of medical school in 1967. And I'm still playing today, all these years later.
Yeah.
And I'm still playing adult softball and having fun doing that.
Is that slow pitch or fast?
This is modified fast pitch that I'm at now. And,
I played that too. That's why I asked, because I played fast pitch, but then as we got older, we were doing slow pitch, but I didn't know about the modified.
So this was I guess what was in New York at that time was kind of more of a slow pitch type of a modified. And then when I moved out to Seattle, which we'll get to in a minute, we were arc ball mostly, and then coming back east 15 years ago, we were focusing on this modified fast pitch.
So you're in medical school. What about residencies?
Well, let me just as an MD PhD student, I was kind of, where am I going here? I originally was a chemistry major in college and hadn't given medicine a lot of thought, but the Vietnam War and the possibility of getting drafted focused me a little bit that way, and the idea there was an MD PhD program allowed me to combine both things. My background was in chemistry, but when I got to the medical school, what they were doing in the chemistry department and biochemistry department were not as appealing to me, and I got brought together with a mentor for clinical stuff who was doing immunology, and I wound up doing immunology research on macrophage function for my PhD work.
Oh.
I gravitated toward pediatrics and wanted to get away from New York City, otherwise I'd never leave, and so went out to Seattle to do my residency at the Children's Hospital, University of Washington.
And that was in
pediatrics,
that was in
pediatrics in 1974. I'd never thought about sports and medicine, but of course the University of Washington at that time had the first academic division of sports medicine in the country.
I didn't know
Jim
that.
Garrick was running at the time, and he had the research help of Ralph Requa. And so I found out about that in my internship year when Dr. Garrick gave a lecture to our house staff at the Children's Hospital, and he was really focusing on a research project he was doing with trainers in high schools and also trying to educate people. He created a series of videotapes, but the talk he gave was really focused on preparedness at the sideline and how, and so that was interesting.
What year, Steve, again?
This was 1974. I was an intern. And I didn't really see, okay, how does that affect me? But I'm interested. Mm-hmm. And the real career change in my life occurred in the fall of 1975 when I had to do 3 months out of Children's Hospital at Harborview in October, November, December. And John McCann, who was the head of the pediatric clinic at Harborview, wanted each of the coming residents to take one afternoon a week, get out of the clinic, have some sort of project. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. But it turned out that the team physician for Garfield High School, inner city school, which housed not only the academic program, but was really a very rich, lively school with African-American feeling. I mean, it's the alma mater of both Quincy Jones and Jimi Hendrix, so people know, and for those who are following basketball today, Brandon Roy is a graduate. So he wanted to find someone to help, and the orthopedist there, St. Elmo Newton, and he came to John McCann at Harborview and said, you know, I'm in the ortho clinic, but I'm looking for someone to help. Is this maybe one of your residents might be interested in being the team physician? So every day I got a call from the secretary of the peds department. Do you have a project? Do you have a project? Do you have a project? And it was always just before lunch, and it was a resident admitting in the hospital, and when you get an outside call, that's usually a sign that you're getting an admission. So after about 10 days, I said, you know what, I'll do it. And so that was my first thrust into the sports medicine. Now, the great part about this, I arrived October 1. So they had already started their season in September. They were midway through.
Football?
Football.
Yeah. And
this was one of the 4 schools that Jim Garrick was doing his research project in, where he was doing injury surveillance. He had gotten a grant from the Consumer Product Safety Commission, and they had put an athletic trainer in 4 high schools and had a computer, not the kind we have today, but you know, one of those things you needed cards to put it.
I remember that.
Back in the, and so Garfield was one of the 4 schools that had the trainer, but that trainer left at the end in June when the 2-year grant was up, and none of the 4 high schools in the Seattle area that had gotten the benefit of having the trainers retained them.
I see.
So I now stepped into a place where everything Garrick had said in that lecture should be in place, but what I discovered when I got there was they had nothing. They had a 1 student trainer, and that was really the genesis, I would think, right there of my career. Wow. Because that's when I realized that it wasn't knowledge, it wasn't help, but it was the capacity to organize and put stuff together that would be lasting. Because the trainer really left no legacy behind. Because in fact, everybody said, oh, he's here, he takes care of everything, he's great, and we don't have to do anything, instead of saying, how can we learn from him? He was such a fine trainer, Rich Carey, that 10 years later, the NATA recognized him as the outstanding high school athletic trainer in the nation.
Wow.
Back in Illinois.
Wow.
So he was a fabulous person, did all this stuff, but there was really not much there.
Where was Garrick? What was his?
Garrick was at the university,
okay.
Team physician,
okay.
and he was taking care of all the teams,
okay.
and he was doing research on injury surveillance, and he was doing educating of residents and the like.
Okay.
So now I was really enthused, and I finished my 3 months. I was really turned on by this, and I wanted to make an effort to continue during the rest, because I felt we owed something to Garfield. I want to continue during the rest of my residency during the subsequent months. But sports medicine was not only unrecognized at that time, it was almost like, this has anything to do with your education? And so when I made arrangements to go back and do physicals, a couple of months later with one of the other attendings at Harborview, I got in trouble because I left the hospital to go and do something educational and service-wise.
Yeah.
So it was really, now, so here I was, this was fun, this was exciting. I managed to be able to continue being the team doctor the next fall during the last year of my residency. But where was I going to, where was my future? And my future really, at the time, I wanted very much to stay in Seattle, was focused on the immunology research side of things. So I was
you had your Ph.D.
I had my Ph.D. in immunology.
Okay.
And my work in pediatrics. So I was approached both by the pediatric allergists, which were Bill Pearson and Warren Bierman and Cliff Furukawa and Gail Shapiro. And I did some work with them and took an elective. And I also worked at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center with Irv Bernstein doing some research on his work on mouse cancer cells.
Wow.
And we literally applied for, and I got National Cancer Institute and NIH funding for a fellowship. It was too late to apply for allergy money. So there I was, that's what I was going to do. And the sports medicine, well, okay, it was good, but what am I going to do with it? I applied for Robert Wood Johnson Clinical Scholars. And when I got there to the interview with the program, they said, this is wonderful, but where's your faculty sponsor? Who's going to hire you when you're done?
Oh.
I said, faculty sponsor? What are you talking about? And they said, oh, everybody, this is a preparatory thing for a future academic career. And so I didn't really have a mess, so they made me an alternate. Well, comes around, it's now, my residency is going to end June 30, 1977. It's now June 7th, 1977. on the floor, in fact, the same pediatric floor I was when I agreed to go to Harborview a couple of years before. 3 weeks into my residency, and Bev Morgan, who's the chair of our department, says, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we would meet with the chief of staff at Children's and the chairman of the department to go over all the admissions in the hospital, so in case they were called, they would know. And Bev says, Steve, what are you doing July 1? Well, she knew what I was doing July 1. So I said, but she said, well, it turns out that both Jim Garrick, the team physician, and Chris Myers, the non-orthopedic physician, are both vacating their positions.
Oh, gee.
And we have a 1-year spot open for the non-orthopedic because there's another doc who was there, who was finishing his residency training, who we promised that slot to. That was John Olerud Sr.
I remember him.
And so,
absolutely.
So they said, are you interested in this job? And that's where I really had to think. I could be another person doing hematology, oncology, cancer research. Will I make a difference? Here's a new field of sports medicine. They offered me a half-time job for a year. What do you think?
Yeah. Wow.
And so I pursued that and decided that's really where I wanted to go. Went through a whole series of interviews, and on June 30th, 4 in the afternoon, they offered me the job to start in the morning. And the rest, they say, is history.
Yeah.
So
was that a faculty appointment then?
Well,
how did that work?
It was a faculty appointment as an acting instructor and whatever they would.
Was that through pediatrics?
That was a combination of pediatrics and orthopedics.
And
that was combined.
Yeah,
that was combined. And so I wound up being the team physician. And then what I did with other parts of my time was I enrolled in the Master's Public Health program, just like I would have done had I been a Robert Wood Johnson
so you
clinical scholar.
did an MPH.
Right, and so I did an MPH at that time. Now what happened
You were busy.
was that the idea, the genesis for my experience at Garfield was that Frank Inslee, who was the athletic director for the Seattle Public Schools, called us and said, we don't have enough docs to be team docs. Maybe you guys at Sports Medicine University can help us. And I said, you know, I'm willing to do that, but I have a broader idea of a concept for trying to do a more complete program. And I had thought out the concept of this athletic healthcare system. And so he thought about it, and then we both discovered that there were federal dollars through the U.S. Department of Education, through Title IV-C, that would allow one to apply for a grant. And so we jointly wrote a grant that got funded. And again, that was another offshoot, a very important part of my career was to develop that model program for high schools to prevent and manage injuries. That involved doing an assessment like JCHO does with hospitals, educating coaches and student trainers, school nurses, residents, having standard procedures and protocols, checklists, all that sort of stuff, having an evaluation component, and then having feedback to make for self-improvement.
What year was that, Steve?
This was 1977 to 78.
Wow, and you got the grant?
We got the grant, and the first 3 years we did things through the Seattle schools, and then we had to demonstrate at the state level with the research data we gathered that we made a difference, and that made us eligible to now go national to get an additional year of funding to take the program to other schools within the state,
that's neat.
and then to have a national validation.
Yeah.
And then we were validated nationally 3 separate times, and took that program all over the country and the world to work with schools all over. Meanwhile, as team physician for the University of Washington, I really got involved with revising the physical exam form, the physical appearance of that, as well as doing some research on the exercise-induced asthma. And the allergy group, myself, produced a paper on the incidence of exercise asthma in the college population. And a few years later, when Bill got involved with the U.S. Olympic Committee on the drug committee there, we came up with a questionnaire that I essentially wrote that's still used today by the Olympic Committee for screening for who's at risk for exercise-induced asthma.
So you were in this position a year.
And I was starting to go on all this stuff. and basically, I was the team physician only 4 years.
But they offered it to you for a 1 year.
Oh, yeah, they offered, but what happened after that was that I was able to be kept on with essentially soft monies that they were able to keep me in that position.
Okay.
And then the grant covered in. So I was always a patchwork. I never really had meaningful stuff. And I got to a point where I also realized that nobody understood what sports medicine was and what I was doing. And primary care, the peds people didn't really get it. The orthopedic people didn't get it. And so to protect myself, I was willing to go into the sort of limbo category of lecturer, which you could stay on forever without having to, because I was worried that if I tried the true academic track, I wouldn't move forward from that position.
So you had to hustle for funds.
I did for my whole career.
For the whole time.
My whole 17 years on the faculty.
Because we got to move on to other stuff, but I remember going to your going away party back when you headed to New Jersey. So while we're at this stage, when did you find out about ACSM?
Well, from Ralph Rico, I found out about ACSM in 1980, and I attended my first meeting in Miami in 1980, and saw ACSM, and that was my home organization, because at that time, the Academy of Pediatrics had a committee on sports medicine that wrote pronouncements and papers, position papers, but there really was no interest group section, and if you went to a meeting and they had a lecture on sports medicine, I knew as much as anyone who was lecturing. So to me, there wasn't a home then. The MSSM didn't exist for another 15 years or 12 years down the road. So ACSM was my home. And I really felt comfortable there and tried to get as much involved, presented abstracts and things, spoke occasionally through the years, and then eventually wound up on committees. And I remember being appointed to the Health and Science Policy Committee when Russ Pate was chairing that, and was very excited, as that was an area of great interest.
Huge
committee. Great interest to me. And today I'm chairing that committee, and I'm completing 9 years as chairperson.
I didn't know it was that long, but if Russ was the former chair.
Right, so Russ, and then Gary Wadler and Lorraine Brilla, and then myself as chair. So that was really important. And then I was also put on the Liaison Committee, and what I discovered in the Liaison Committee is there was no formal liaison to the Academy of Pediatrics. And by this time, the Academy was doing more in the way of sports medicine. And a few years later, I wound up being appointed to the Council on Sports Medicine and Fitness from AAP. So that gave me the opportunity to link and bridge between the two organizations.
So they would be, American Academy of Pediatrics would be your other major
would be my other major organization. I work with the AMSSM, American Medical Society for Sports Medicine, but my main role there is being on the faculty of the research conference we do every summer for the incoming sports medicine fellows. I'm on the team of 7 or 8 of us who put on this workshop for a couple of days.
And since the 80s, when you first went to your ACSM meeting, you've seen quite a change in the role that physicians are playing in ACSM as well. I mean, there's been
it's kind of gone up and down, because in the beginning there were a lot of physician involvement, primarily among the cardiologists. And the orthopedists were the real strength of what was happening within the college. But the meeting in 1985 in Indianapolis was one that stands out because, for whatever reason, there didn't seem to be enough clinical material. And the physicians realized what's going on here. And we made an effort to boost that. And that also was the genesis of the idea of maybe they needed their own group, and really where AMSSM's idea started from.
I see.
And now this year we've signed a mutual agreement, which I think is very, very helpful, because the two groups are so complementary and synergistic to one another that it's very helpful. But there has been a lot, because the primary care doctors have really, I think, taken over as the main thrust of the physician group. The pediatricians, the family doctors, those internists who do a lot of sports medicine have more influence now than the orthopedists and the cardiologists. And that seems, well, that's good, bad, and different, is really, that's the reality of the numbers that are coming along.
I didn't think of this, but the way you explained it there, do you really think that the formation of, and I've forgotten the title, the
MSSM,
came about because of physicians in ACSM that didn't think they were getting enough program time and that type of thing, sort of split off and formed their own group?
The answer to that is yes and.
Okay.
And simultaneous to, before 1990, there were, let's go maybe 85, let's say, there were very few sports medicine fellowships.
True.
So there really were there were very few formal training. And then some of the real pioneers, John Lombardo's, Doug McKay's, and Jim Puffer's, those people started to train folks, and then it mushroomed from there. Well, where are those people going to find a home, and where are we going to grow to, and where are we going? And so that really was the point, I think, in addition to not feeling that a CSM could provide that home, the idea that we were now growing 50, 80, 100, 150, 160 people a year, we needed a place that we could focus and
just
control
on your own.
On our own.
Yes,
so it was a little of each.
Yeah.
And I think that was
makes sense.
It does make sense.
It's good.
It does make sense.
In the brief time remaining, maybe you could comment a little bit more on your committee right now. I mean, I was at the several sessions, and the work you guys are doing is just so crucial at this stage.
Well, when back in the 1990s, the policy committee was really an unimportant part of the college. We existed. We met once a year, but really there was no dollar investment. There was no long-range vision. We really wasn't seen as a critically important point. But advocacy and working outside of our organization with other organizations, moving the national needle into recognizing the importance of physical activity became front and center became really another pillar of the organization. And the need to have a presence so that you could control the dialogue, influence legislators, be out there in the public arena really became important. And we've been pushing, and the college has been responding, and Jim Whitehead more and more sees how important that is and how much of his time is devoted in that direction to really want to put this on a major track. And that's really where we are. I think we've mastered the ability to run meetings, to publish journals, to certify people, and our next arena is to move globally and to move into the advocacy position. And so we've taken up that mantle and that charge and nursed it through. We had a roundtable that we started working on about in 2004, that was held in 2006, that really laid out this whole concept of physical activity and overcoming inactivity. Frank Booth had really done a lot of pushing on that, and Russ Pate has been the person behind both getting the National Activity Plan, for us making sure that the guidelines from the Surgeon General were produced, and then sort of coming off that whole idea independently, but cooperatively, is this whole exercise is medicine notion. And then the other piece is the concussion, and realizing that you can do something at a state level that can spread around the country and spread our influence. So all these are really taken advocacy and policy and changed the whole landscape. And I've had the privilege and pleasure of bringing this along. Back at the meeting in St. Louis, which was how many years ago, 10 or 11, we had our first session on advocacy where I got help from the American Academy of Pediatrics to bring their national people in. We had a congressperson come. We held a couple of sessions on how to do advocacy. And now we're moving along to the point now where we really want to get the concept of a key contact, one person in every congressional district who can reach out to the congressman or woman and just engage them. So these are really all the areas that we're moving advocacy as a central part, a vital part of what we do, and one of the pillars of the organization.
Well, a good example isn't there's like 20 states now or more that have concussion
all in the last
laws.
2 years.
Yeah, and that's direct outgrowth of what you guys have been doing.
And that's the concept. I mean, we can't take all the credit. I mean, Stan Herring and Jim Whitehead and Roger Goodell, the NFL.
There's been some players there, but still.
But again, it's the concept that if we want to move the national dialogue toward healthiness, toward wellness, toward overcoming inactivity, toward supporting research in the basic sciences to give us the information. And this really takes lobbying, advocacy, and being at the table, being a player in everything that's happening. And that really is a key point.
One, like A minute.
Okay.
I forgot that. We didn't get there. We went off. I went off on a tangent. Where are you now, and what are you doing now?
Okay, I'm at Jersey Shore University Medical Center in Neptune, New Jersey. Been there for 15 years, and direct the Jersey Shore Sports Medicine Center, and train 1 or 2 doctors a year, and have my own sports medicine fellowship. We do a lot of work with youth soccer. We cover colleges, we cover high schools. We're out in the community covering running events. We're doing a lot of educational and other things. And at the very moment, I'm chairing a task force on cardiac screening within New Jersey.
Oh.
I got involved in being the author of a pamphlet to distribute to all the families and athletes on cardiac screening. I was heavily involved in our New Jersey concussion law, and I'm going around the state lecturing on concussion. I'm also the president of the New Jersey chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics in my spare time.
Yeah, I was going to say, your life has been consistent, busy, busy, busy.
Busy, but making it, being a leader and
making a difference.
Making a difference.
Absolutely.
Leading the way, as we say.
Well, thanks, Steve. It's been fun. Very fun. Thank you.
Went by fast.
Yeah, I told you.